Welcome to Nugget 76 with Steve Groman, and today we will go back to the Inyo National Forest and the area along US 395. We had mentioned when we went to the Hot Creek geological site, we told you we would do a nugget on the Inyo craters and the earthquake fault. After visiting Devil's Postpile National Monument, we drove along Mammoth Scenic Loop Road. In the previous nuggets, we talked about how in the Inyo National Forest newspaper, they talk about the geology of the Eastern Sierra, and that's where we are going to continue here. The first stop is the earthquake fault. And the sign reads, although it is called the earthquake fault, this scenic feature is a fissure, a deep crack that opened as magma molten rock pushed its way toward the surface. Look closely at the edges of the fault, and you'll see the sides of the rock, now 6 to 10 feet apart, fit together perfectly. The fissure opened around 550 to 650 years ago, during a time of intense volcanic activity that included steam-blasted Inyo craters and eruptions at Dead Man Obsidian and Glass Creek domes, just a few miles due north of here. What do you have to say? Do you recall when we went to this earthquake fault? And it wasn't too exciting, was it?
Yes, I do recall. It may be not too exciting, but it sure is a lot of good evidence of when the fountains of the Great Deep break up. The noise, the turmoil, the violence that Noah and family must have undergone was just incredible. When you see this kind of evidence, it just gives us great examples of what must have happened at the time of Noah's flood. We can only imagine the amount of noise and violence that it would have been.
Right, this is just one little rip, one little 6-foot, 10-foot crack. We went on just a few miles up the road to a forest road that led us to a quarter-mile hike to the two volcanic explosion pits, which contain small lakes. Again, once you get there, you take the quick hike up to the Inyo's craters, and they say that these craters are a result of 3 steam explosions on the summit and south flank of Deer Mountain. Scientists think that the craters formed when rising magma encountered large pockets of groundwater, causing explosive vaporization of water to steam. Boy, I bet you could pop in right now and have something to say about that.
Well, I'll just leave it at the fountains of the Great Deep.
The pre-actic explosions created funnel-shaped craters and hurled overlying rock debris to distances of about a mile, but no magma reached the surface. Inyo craters formed shortly after the eruption of Dead Man Obsidian and Glass Creek Dome, sometime between 650 and 550 years ago. And here is a picture of the Dead Man Dome, the Deer Mountain, and then the 2 pits that we stood by. They said recent volcanic activity shaped much of the landscape around you, and the eruption that produced Dead Man Dome occurred only a few hundred years ago. And then here is a photograph of the sign there that the North and South Inyo craters contain lakes that are colored a vivid emerald green from minerals in the surrounding rock. This is the part that I wanted to get to. This is a sign that's right at the railing at the crater. Inyo craters formed sometime between 550 and 650 years ago, very recently in geologic time, by a series of steam blast or pre-attic eruptions occurring as rising magma encountered the water table under Deer Mountain. The explosions progressed from north to south, forming a chain of funnel-shaped craters. Radiocarbon age dating of trees toppled by the blast indicates that the craters formed in rapid succession, one after another, perhaps within days of each other. Although no stories or records exist, it is likely that local Paiute Indians saw or heard these spectacular events. Well, what can you add to that?
I would like to encourage people one more time to go visit these kind of places. There's so much history, there's so much geology, there's so much evidence for what God said He did, mainly at the time of the flood. To see it with your own eyes when you understand the timing and the mechanism that the Bible describes, how it's explained by all these things, how you can see it in real life. And even if you are taking a family vacation, you're just passing across the country, you see a sign with any kind of crater or canyon or any kind of geology features, if you have the time, pull off, take a look at the evidence that God left all over this earth for what He said He did. You know, in regards to the dating, carbon dating is only good for a young time frame, a recent time frame, as opposed to all the other radiometric dating methods. We'll have to do a nugget on the carbon dating method. If I understand that sign right, what they were trying to say is they can tell these things are within days of each other. You can't tell that with carbon dating. It's not that precise. We do know from history of when things like this do happen, as anybody knows, any active volcano in Hawaii or anywhere, things take place in a relatively short time frame, within days, weeks, and maybe a few months. But as far as geology, the way they look at it, it would be a really, really short time frame. But it happens within days of each other. That's that's true, but we'll do a nugget on carbon dating.
But
give
they
people
can
an
tell
overview.
do you think that the accuracy of the 550s to 650 time frame, can they determine that through carbon dating probably?
Yeah, that's possible.
Because that is within the parameters of what carbon dating supposedly works in.
It is within those parameters, but even at that, you can't tell that for sure. We will do a nugget on carbon dating. You have to know there's been no contamination. You have to have a basic idea of when the time frame was that you believe it to be. You have to know that the decay rate is consistent and steady. There are a lot of factors.
I don't know that we can really know for sure that it did happen in that time frame, but they did give us a hint that if we did have records from the Paiute Indians, that we would know. That would be scientific. It's kind of like the Bible. We do have a written record. We have where the different generations spoke and told each other what had happened, like the generations from Noah could tell about the flood, and then Moses was told by God what to write down. They can carbon date, or they can do any kind of datings, or guess what trees blew up when and why, but we really don't know if the scientific method isn't in place, right, with observation and testing. This could have occurred during Noah's flood. It might not be what they said at all, but it is an example of where we just need to look back and see what the Bible says. This could have occurred at Noah's flood?
Absolutely. It's actually pure speculation. They have no way to know that for sure. It obviously happened at the time of Noah's flood or since then.
All right, well, thank you.